Andrew. See, I get to interview my co-host. This is so...
Man, this is hard, but this is what's coming up. We'll have more details about it at the end of the month. This is what's going to be official at the end of the month.
So, you know, I clown him all the time about everything. It doesn't matter. We clown each other in good...
It's in good spirits.
But how did you come up with the title? Because when I heard the title, I was thinking, man, he's serious about this. Like, this isn't just some...
The title is interesting. The real story behind it is back in 2014 when I was able to attend Maya Angelou's memorial service because she was a professor at Wake Forest for a little bit over 30 years.
And Andrew is an alum.
I'm an alum of Wake Forest University. Hey, go Deeks.
1901.
No, 1834 is when they got established. They won their bowl game.
I was talking about when you graduated, dude.
Oh, well, never mind. Point being is I graduated and go Deeks after beating Temple in their bowl game. But no, seriously, when I got my RSVP back, it came with the name Joe Snorton. I'm like, how do you get the name Joe from Andrew? They're two different things. So in doing a little bit of research, I really got creative with it, and there's an extended family member, but I'd used that name Joe instead of his real name. So what ended up happening is we took time just to kind of have a conversation about the concept of love, but what we did is we looked at it through the lenses of different relationships we have had, do have, or hope to have.
Okay.
So in regards to the chapters, it's interesting because the first half is me actually talking with him and pulling what he did and putting it in poetic form. My family member, Joe.
Okay, good.
But what happened is the second half is him flipping the script and asking me questions. Ooh. And me having to reinterpret what I'm thinking and putting it in poetic form.
Nice.
So it's almost like a dual interview. So the different lenses that we look through, like were relationships that we had with our parents, our siblings, extended family, friends, people we used to date, people we used to be married to, and things along those lines.
So it is love, but it's not love in the Romeo, where art thou?
I mean, you've got some elements of it, but it's looking at it as based on this relationship or based on that relationship. What are elements of love that you saw, experienced, and hold near and dear to you? But another way I did this a little bit differently is a lot of times with poetry books, it's like, here's the poem, and while you think it's great, it's like you have no clue of what they're talking about.
What is the context to...
Exactly, you don't know the context, you have no clue unless you hear the author. So what I did for each chapter was it's a preview where we take a segment of the conversation so people get the context. So when they get into the poem, they know exactly what they're reading and it makes more sense. And it's something that almost everyone can connect with. Whether it was a positive or not so positive relationship, we can identify the relationships we've had with our parent or guardian or our extended family or people we are involved with or people that we used to be involved with or things along those lines. So while some of the chapters, especially when it taps into people we used to be involved with, obviously those are going to be the juiciest ones.
Right.
But to me, the two chapters are really the most meaningful are the last two chapters, chapter 18 and chapter 19. Chapter 18 is a self-reflection of when I look at all these experiences, what does it really mean to me?
Yeah. See, that's something that I like, and I also like the fact that there's a little bit of context for the poetry because when I was in college, I had an honors English class, and I would get into it all the time with my professor because he would tell me what the poem meant, and I would say to him, "Oh, we got a caller?"
I guess we did.
And I would say to him, unless you're the author of the poem, or unless you can show me where the author says this is what I'm feeling, don't tell me how to interpret it. And we would get, I like to argue with people, but we would get into it. So it's kind of good that you have a context for the reader to see, all right, I'm going to read it first and I'm going to have my interpretation. I'm going to read what your context, where you were coming from, then I'm going to go back and read it again. And
exactly,
that's how I like to experience.
Well, I mean, my thing is this: if you have an idea of where you're going, it's going to make a lot more sense. So instead of just throwing it out there and it's like, oh, this is great, but you're like, I have no clue. It's like at least before I get into the poem, I understand where the author is coming from.
Right.
So now when I read it, it's like, okay, and then you can see, hey, the author tapped into some things that I felt, but maybe they tapped into something totally differently, but that's okay.
Right.
But the reason why, like I said, I point to those last two chapters, chapter 18, and most of the chapters are like maybe 6-7 pages. So the entire book's maybe 120 pages.
So you can knock it out in a weekend easy.
Excuse me, you could knock it out at your own pace, basically. But chapter 18, because it really is more self-reflective, and I think what's powerful about chapter 19, which is the longest chapter, is it's the author having a conversation with a higher authority. So whether you want to call him Yahweh, Jehovah Jireh, Allah, or what have you, God too.
Yes.
You're really having that type of conversation. And I think what's neat about it is, especially when you question when things didn't work out, and we understand on one level sometimes that's for your own protection, and you get that after the fact that things needed to stop at this point because it would have really been counterproductive. But on the flip side, you're like, okay, can it be done a different way?
Can it not hurt?
And I'll tell you what's a good analogy without getting too deep and too spiritual. But for those who do follow the Bible, and you think about when Christ was in the Garden of Gethsemane, and depending on the interpretation of the gospel, he actually was, during part of his prayer, saying, hey, look, if there's a different way to do this, please let me know. But then he corrected and caught himself saying, how dare I ask that of you, your will be done. And I'm not comparing it by any means to that level, but we always have questions as to why this way, or why this person, or why this experience. And even though time reveals this is why it's done, it's almost like, you can't see the forest through the trees. So it's like, why did it have to conclude in this manner? Why did it have to go on for so long? Why did it have to be this painful? Why did it have to be this hurtful? Yeah. But you then kind of separate that, and you understand you still have the capacity to love and love others. And when you think about the positive and constructive relationships you have had, you feed more off of those. You acknowledge and you look back briefly on those things that didn't work out, so you are aware, but it teaches you that you are capable. And I think sometimes, especially like during the holidays when things spike, and it's like either breakup or makeup time, and when people break up, it's real painful, and you're going through stuff and it hurts.
And then you have to be around your family and have your family say to you, how's such and such?
Or or even people you don't know, or people that might not be as privy, are like, yeah, how's such and such? And you're like, that's like no longer in existence. But the hope is, like I said, by looking through the different lenses, there's something that people can identify with. So they might not have had the exact same experience, but there's something you can relate with. Like I said, everyone has had some type of constructive connection with somebody. By the same token, some people have had some connectivity that just didn't work, plain and simple. But there's still a lesson to be learned.
Out of every, I'm happily married. I've been with my wife now 11 years. And when I think back on relationships, and some of the really bad ones, I would do it 1,000,000 times over to end up exactly where I am right now. Because I don't think, one, I would be the person that I am if I hadn't gone through some of that crazy stuff in my younger days.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Like when you look back, you're like, I don't mind the lesson that's learned, but why did it have to be this way? But you make a good point. If it wasn't that way, would you be the person you are now?
Yeah.
And I think that's where you kind of draw peace with things, and you understand, yes, you do have the capacity. Because, I'll be honest, on a personal level, when I was transitioning out of a divorce, it's almost like, you have the capacity to, but you never know until you're in it. So I'm thankful that when I was in something that I, am no longer in now, that yes, I have the capacity. And now it's just a matter of, just keeping your head about you, being grounded. Like the old folks say, take things a day at a time.
One day at a time. It gets better with time, baby.
And you got to make sure that there's always something new you learn each day about yourself, about your partner, individually and collectively. But bottom line is, You know, it's a story of happiness. It is a story of hurt to varying degrees, but it's a story.
But you
of
can't
hope.
have life without hurt. Like
Exactly.
you can't go through life and not have any pain. You can't go through life and not have had a breakup. Like that is unrealistic.
Exactly.
You can't live your life like that. You know, even relationships that aren't intimate. Even with your parents, with our grandparents, we've loved them and we've been hurt because we've lost them. So anytime, any relationship that we're in, at some point we may have to experience some loss, and it's gonna hurt. No matter what, it's gonna hurt.
But I think by trying to tap into a little bit of everything, it casts a wide net. So whether it's a younger adult, older adult, male, female, hetero, homo, it doesn't matter. It's like everyone can find something that they can relate with, and like I said before, the biggest thing is it's a conversation, and based on that conversation, making it a lot more reader accessible.
Awesome.
And that's the beauty about poetry. I remember when I would teach it, and even now when we use poetry, like when we do work with the kids in our nonprofit, I'm like, sometimes some of the most powerful statements don't necessarily have to be a 20-30 page chapter or 20-30 page paper. Sometimes the most powerful statements can be in the form of 4 lines, 4 stanzas,
4 bars.
4 bars, whatever you want to call it. So, and hopefully, it encourages other people, whether you get to the book writing stage or you just get a composition book and just write. That's okay. That's all right to do. So hopefully, this is hopefully the first of many. Actually, it probably will be the first of many, but looking forward and excited to this first one. I really am.
And when we come back, I'm going to ask you all the good information because I don't have a copy. You just brought something here for me to look at.
Don't worry. I think that's the hint. Good
okay.
thing I ordered a couple of proofs, so this is the raw copy.
Yeah. So when we get back, we'll talk about the release date stuff. We'll be right back.
I saw.
Square, what you call those things you put around your neck. But